Today I talked to Eric Hunley. Eric runs a podcast called Unstructured with intriguing, unbelievable guests. He and I talk a little shop about how to interview a guest and how to keep the conversation flowing. So with that, let's talk shop with Eric Hunley. Today on the show, we have Mr. Eric Hunley. Thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate you showing up.
Dude, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So Eric runs a podcast / Vodcast called Unstructured. Now, if you guys haven't heard about this, he basically talks to extraordinary people and the moments that shape their lives. And it's just his guests on the show and his style of interviewing is real top notch. Eric, would you like to expand on what the show is about?
Sure. It's an opportunity for me to talk to amazing people that I would never be able to talk to. You know, for example, I almost called it Idea Pub. So my theory was the spirit would be, I'm sitting at a table in a pub and one of them walks up and they sit down, talk, and I'm like, you do what? You're a KGB agent? You lived unstructured, you lived undercover for all these years? Or you're an FBI agent? How does that work? Okay, well, I've talked to this other FBI agent and they did undercover work, but you handle terrorism or you're CIA? Well, Now, what's the difference between an analyst and a officer? Or, what are the three legs of the CIA? There's like security officer. There's so many details and nuance, and I'm just a giant nerd.
Right.
And as I get to talk to them, I get to go into all this crazy detail of what exactly does that mean? How does that work? I have a lot of body language people and psychologists, things like that. So it's like, okay, why do people do that? How can you tell if they're lying or not lying? What exactly is statement analysis? So different things.
Your show kind of reminds me of that TV show, Criminal Minds.
Yeah, I get that they use definitely elements of body language. Right. Yeah, I love the behavioral stuff. Now, to set expectations, I'm not a behavioral expert. I'm just a big nerd who likes talking. So I'm a fan of the people who do it.
Right.
And just really enjoy hearing them and learning a little bit about myself, about others, and just sort of like, well, how does that work? I'm watching the debate. Why are they doing that?
Well, see, that was actually one of my next questions was that, what did you do before this? Like, were you in the government field? Were you an agent of some sort, or you just had an interest for the topic?
Yeah, I'm just a dude. I mean, I was in the Army at one point, but it wasn't anything like that.
Wow. Your YouTube channel, I reviewed your videos, and your YouTube channel is pretty legit. Like, your thumbnails are awesome. Your images, your design sense, and the way you have everything structured in your playlist, it's awesome.
I have help. I have somebody who helps me with the thumbnails. I don't have the skills to do that. It's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
He discovered the show and we became friends online. He's a fan of the podcast and he helps me with the thumbnails.
So that's great.
Bradley Eagle Feather, shout out.
That's great. But all in all, it looks awesome. Looks like you have everything together. So how long have you been podcasting?
I've been podcasting since March 15th, 2018.
Okay, so quite a while. And then how long after you started podcasting did you move into vodcasting, into video?
January of this year.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, January 30th, actually. And that was inspired by Chase Hughes, one of the guys in the behavior panel I was telling you about. He actually lives in the same area I do.
Okay.
And he gave me a call because, we talk on the side. He's like, hey, I want to do a video. I'm like, I don't do video, man. Look, I've got a face for radio. What are you going to do? But he's like, no, I'm trying to put some stuff out there and I really want to do a video. So, why don't we get together, have a couple drinks and, we'll do a video. I'm like, I don't know. Do you have like an iPhone? Maybe we could shoot it on the iPhones and do something. He's like, yeah. So we set up a date to do that. And then he, of course, had to cop out because he had to go teach at Fort Bragg. But
Oh,
I started to think about it, and I was like, well, even if somebody is local, it's kind of a pain to put your gear together and everything else. But here, I've got my whole setup.
mhm.
You notify me, 5 minutes before this, and boom, here I am. Just
Yeah.
walk upstairs, turn on some lights, and, and here's the camera.
Yep.
So that fits in my lazy spectrum. And I thought, well, wait a minute, Chase, you're a pretty big, presence online. He's got a lot of fans.
Mhm.
If I can get them to come in and do a live stream and chat, then maybe I don't have to do as much research on this episode.
Okay.
So I went ahead and thought, let me try this live stream. I did it, had a bunch of feedback, people talking back and forth. I was like, oh, I love this. This is awesome.
Mhm.
I did it. I'm like, well, maybe I'll make a habit of this. So I called another online friend and set him up for the next week. And I had one person
Oh,
in the chat.
man, that's a bummer.
Well, fortunately, it was a friend though. So I'm
Uh-huh.
like, okay, fine. Well, I'm just going to go hang out and talk to my buddy.
Right.
And we did. And he's been back on again. And ironically, he has a YouTube channel with 300,000 subs.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So he just crossed that marker. And the next time we did it with him and somebody else, the numbers were very, very high. But
Mhm.
it was hilarious to go that first time and be like, oh boy.
Nobody's here. Nobody's watching.
Right. But that's something I learned because I spend so much time researching for every podcast episode
Mhm.
that as a rule, I will not have anybody on the live stream unless they've been on the podcast or I've done a video interview with them. That's
Okay.
where I establish a relationship and sort of get to know them.
Mhm.
And then I still have to do the research. So I'm glad in a way that second one was a poor turnout
Mhm.
because I was able to, wing it and get through. But now it's like, I can't do that. I have to do research. I've got to be on my game and really, I have to work really hard at it.
Well, that's one thing about the topic that you talk about is that you do have to do some research. It's not like you can do it off the cuff. You can't just wing it. But live streams, are hard, and every podcaster I think who's made the move to live streaming has experienced the 1-person audience or the 0-person audience, and it's tough. It's tough to continue your show when possibly nobody is watching, but it's still at the same time, I think you're still creating content, and it's still
Sure.
something for you to put up that somebody could maybe later watch at a later time. So,
Oh yeah. I just got a comment on that episode today. People dug it out of the catalog
yep.
and yeah, it's there. But it also makes me completely terrified to go on my own because there's a part of me saying you really should do a live stream,
Mhm.
talk to your audience. You love the comments and you talk to them with the comments, but you need to put yourself out there and do a live stream. I'm like, if I do a live stream and I'm sitting here going, well, okay, it looks like it's refreshed. Okay, go ahead and type a Y if you're there. I think it says there's 3 watching. I'm not sure. Um,
Yeah.
and I just
Yeah.
see myself doing the dying guppy.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So I don't know. At some point, I probably should do that. And if I know that people are going to interact in the chat, awesome. But again, thank God it was a friend of mine, and I wasn't alone.
Right.
Terrified of that.
Yeah. Were you terrified of doing the live stream at first, like in being in front of the camera? Are you camera shy?
I am, but it's kind of weird. I know that I'm not handsome. I know I'm who I am. So it's kind of like I just am like, well, if you're fine looking at me, whatever. I'm just throwing it out there. I know that sounds weird, but perfect's the enemy of done.
Mhm.
And I sort of take solace in the fact that no, I'm not really trying to impress somebody. I'm trying to share a guest with you. They're much more interesting than me anyway. I'm just facilitating.
Right. Exactly. Your show seems pretty successful. I mean, your downloads, your followers, everybody following you on social media, you have quite a huge following. And when you spoke at Mapcon 2019,
Mhm.
the Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference, how
Mhm.
was that? because I'm trying to see how a podcaster goes from being behind the microphone and being in a studio to being on
Mhm.
stage and talking in front of somebody, and
Well,
talking
that
in
one
front of
was
an
pure
audience.
cotton mouth. I had cotton mouth when I did that. I'm not kidding. So it's very fortunate. Joe Pardo runs Indie PodCon. It's called now. It was Mapcon at that time, and he helps people speak for the first time in the industry. And now I'm speaking in front of all my peers, and some of them are higher level.
Right.
So obviously I was nervous about that, but fortunately, because I was a first timer, I was only allowed, I think, 8 or 9 minutes. Now
Yeah.
it sounds like only 8 or 9 minutes,
Yep.
but go ahead and step out and just start talking for 5 minutes. I dare anybody.
Yeah.
And you'll be thankful that it's only 9 minutes, 8 or 9 minutes. And it was a matter of, I don't know, it was, I have friends that were there that I could kind of look to and sum it up. But I won't say that I wasn't terrified. I really was trying to put out a good impression, trying to put out a good message. But I think it helps most that I was so focused on trying to just put out a good message, like not worrying about how good I look or feel, but just
Mhm.
this is really important. I spent a lot of time researching these guests, and this is how I actually researched them, and this is how I got to these points.
Yeah.
And I could hide behind that. I don't have to worry about, because really my message, I think, is really, really strong. And even if I'm screwing up the message, there's so much good content in here
Right.
that my delivery, it can fall short. I mean, my delivery's not always perfect.
Sure. That's with anybody, I think. But I was actually asked to speak at a conference in December, this coming December, and I have an hour.
Nice.
So
Whew.
yeah.
Make sure you pack in a 20-minute Q&A. I mean,
Yeah.
you'll be sitting there at 20 minutes past, the first 20 going, yeah, if there's any questions out there, hey, feel free to interrupt me anytime.
Right.
If you
Right.
got a question, or you'll repeat a point and say, yeah, I bet you can have a question about that. Oh, wait, let me segue here.
Right.
Yeah, an hour's long, dude.
With your show, what do you think are your favorite topics to talk about? Is it the behavioral science, or, what are your
Hmm.
favorites?
Well, I love talking about, obviously, the behavioral stuff. It's just fascinating what makes you tick the way you do.
Mhm.
But I also love, like Jack Barsky. I mean, I am a child. I'm aging myself, but I'm a Gen Xer,
Mhm.
and the Soviet Union was a very real thing to me.
Yeah.
The Americans is all popular now stuff, but I grew up with that. I grew up with the fear of, were we going to have a nuclear war? We did do duck and cover,
Yeah.
and I really love meeting somebody like Barsky, who was a KGB spy. I mean, and talking to him and learning about his life in that manner. So I love that. I love a lot of my FBI folks. Just they're living. I'm living vicariously through them. Let's be honest.
Right.
I'm just a schlub. During COVID, I was like, I've been prepping my whole life for this.
Right.
I only leave the house to go to the grocery store, pretty much. That's it. But
Mm-hmm.
these people, wow. So I don't know. I love great stories
Yeah.
and fascinating people.
So has anybody come close to revealing like state secrets to you, or anything
I've
confidential?
talked to people on the side, sure, but I don't.
Really?
I avoid really. I'm not a journalist. I'm not a gotcha person.
Right.
It's
You're
not my
more
thing.
you're more interested in the aspect of the job and how they do it and things like
How they
that.
feel, sure,
Yeah.
sure. And I'm also very, very concerned about being salacious. I
Mhm.
think that I think people will go after the gore or go after the controversy in order to get more clicks. And
Yes.
and that really does trouble me. So, as an example, I had OJ Simpson's manager on, who was saying that OJ didn't do it, and I didn't get heavy into details on the murders because, well, we know about them.
Yeah, everybody does
I'm
that.
more like, why do you say he's not? Okay, what about this Glenn Rogers? How does he fit in? And then I brought on an FBI agent to debate him about it, essentially. But I'm very concerned about getting salacious. I don't know, a better way to put it. I'm more interested in how does it affect you as an FBI agent or a profiler. How does it affect you? How do you go about it? What is your procedural aspects? Then, ooh, how many people did Ted Bundy kill?
Right. Yeah, you're not going for the
Oh,
shock value.
thank you. Yeah,
you're going for the
exactly.
actual information.
And sadly, that's not great on the clicks, but I do feel better about it. And
Yeah.
I do sleep better. And I think I'm actually adding more value, it personally.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's what it's all about, bringing the value. You're not, your titles on YouTube, they're not like clickbait. You're not misleading people into thinking what an episode is about, and then it's not, so.
Yeah, I'm terrified of that. And I would be really embarrassed if somebody said, you said blah, blah, blah,
Right.
and it didn't. It's like, no, even I'll give you an example. I have an episode where I have somebody do a profile on somebody else.
Okay.
I don't mention it in the description. I don't mention it at any point. I didn't tweet that this happened or anything else. I just left it. It's near the end of that particular episode. If people discover it, that's great. But these profiles can actually damage somebody's reputation. They can do different things. And I'm trying to handle it in a delicate manner where I feel it's important, but I don't want to just flat out embarrass a person, or again,
Right.
I don't want to do it just because of the celebrity aspect of it. So
And,
that's an example.
and that's great. So how did COVID affect your podcast? How did the quarantine affect you?
The podcast, it tanked the numbers by 20%.
Yeah.
I think everybody took a haircut, at
Mm-hmm.
least all the people I know, and probably helped the YouTube, because I think a lot of people wanted to see a video versus just sit and listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
Even though I have a professional trick for people to know, if you like audiobooks and podcasts and have a problem of falling asleep when you're sitting down, play solitaire on your computer.
My wife does that. She plays solitaire in bed on her phone.
Yeah, and just listen to it, because it's just enough activity to keep your eyes engaged enough to keep you awake, but you can still enjoy the book because you're not getting distracted from the story. Same with the podcast or anything else.
Oh.
Yeah, my wife taught me that one, and I was like, finally. Well, because then I'd be like, oh, let me go up and down the stairs 20 more times, or let me walk around in circles outside the house, or
Yeah.
now I can just keep sitting and growing. No,
You didn't want to just count sheep?
no, no.
But yes, the quarantine has, I think, helped a lot of YouTubers.
Yeah, I think so.
And vodcasters that move into live streaming and all that, because people are looking for something to watch instead of listen. I mean, they're not commuting anymore. They're not going on long drives. They're not really going anywhere. So people like to connect, and I think that that's great too, because you have such a great show with such interesting topics. Is that people would love to connect with you and interact with your shows, and
Please do. I try to comment back.
yeah. So, and that's the beauty of live shows, is that you can instantly get that feedback, and that's awesome. So, you have been on, I want to say, countless other podcasts as a guest, and
I've been on a few. Sure.
Everybody has asked you what your best interview tip is, but I watched your Mapcon presentation and on YouTube, and you talk about something called stock questions. So can you elaborate on that?
Well, especially when you're growing a show and it's easy to fall in this trap. There's a lot of booking agencies, and they're not in of themselves a bad thing. They're often very good, and they can put you with really good guests. But there is a transactional quality. People will hire a booking agency to get them booked onto shows. And part of the service that's being offered is they will have their talking points or stock questions. Well, Actually, there's two things. I think there's stock questions, like I have my 10 questions I always ask, which I despise.
Right.
I'm going into the talking points, and I'll circle back around. I just realized that. I will look at that list from the booking agency. If it's a guest that I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'd like to have them. That does fit a slot, or my audience, I think, will enjoy them.
Mhm.
And I go, okay, there's 10 questions that I won't be asking, because they answer those same questions on every podcast they go on. They're well rehearsed, they're polished. Another tip on that is, if you have a guest on, try to dig a little. Like, I could see you dug a little bit. You went in and found the Mapcon video. You're probably like, oh, this is old. Let's see what he's really about there.
Right.
I don't see what's going on. I love finding interviews from 2010, 2011, many years ago, before people get polished, many years before they know exactly where they're going to be, when they're a little vulnerable, when you just kind of, you find out things about them that are more core to their personality. I think that's the best way to go. And every guest I have, I devise specific questions for them. From scratch. It's not like a form letter or anything else.
Yeah.
Now, stock questions, there are shows out there, and there's a place for it. I am not a fan of those shows. I'm not a fan of the method. I personally don't like it. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have validity, but they will ask 5 questions, 10 questions, whatever, and it's the same 5, 10 questions every single show.
Yeah.
Now, it could be argued that, like, I think Inside the Actor Studio, he asked just about the same questions every time, that you can compare and contrast people in how they respond to these exact same questions. Like, where did you grow up? 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 Okay,
Right.
well, I can see there is a value if you ask a bunch of people all the same question and compare and contrast. But I'm personally just not that interested.
Right.
I don't care for that. I feel like it can be very lazy, because now you can use it and be not lazy. Like, let's say you ask the question all the time, but you pay really close attention to the answer, and there's enough room in there that you do a great follow-up.
Right.
Okay. Maybe that'll work. But in general, don't care for them.
Yeah. See, when I started this, because this show is kind of new, and when I sat down developing the idea for the interviews, the interview episodes I wanted to do, I made a list of 10 questions. So
Right.
then, you know, like I think anybody else would do. But then I came across your video of stock questions, and I'm like, all right, well, this is out the window, you know, and
sorry about that.
But even before this episode, the previous people I've interviewed, I have had to tweak the questions. I've had to personalize them to the actual show that this person was putting on, you know, to the kind of personality that they were, things that they were interested in. And of course, you know, throughout the show, I've expanded on questions. I've added my own questions during conversations, you know, because they come up. But I think it's a good practice to, when you're interviewing, when you're doing a show about interviewing, to make out that list of 10 questions, but
Sure,
don't stick to them, right?
Or it could be a speed round type of thing.
Yeah.
Podcast engineering show, Chris Curran, he has, if you will, a speed round, and it's every time, what's your chain? Well, it's a bunch of podcast nerds who are listening to that, who very much want to know, what microphone do you have? What mixer do you have? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Or another good case is Harry Duran of Podcast Junkies. Asks a couple questions, same ones at the end of a show every time.
Yeah.
And they're kind of profound questions. So that can work as well. Like the closer, and then the meat of the interview kind of goes wherever it's going.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good to have a plan going into these things, but plan to go off script.
Oh yeah. Just listen.
Yeah.
Listen.
So do you have a favorite episode of yours that you did?
Tomorrow's.
What's coming up tomorrow? Tell us what's.
I mean, quite literally, I don't know what it's going to be. essentially, I have trouble saying this is my favorite. I have several that I really love,
Mhm.
but I'm always trying to find the next episode where I'm going to do a better job, where it's
Right.
going to get more interesting. So I'd like to think my favorite episode is still to come.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay. Is there anybody in government today that you wish that you could get on your show?
In government,
Yeah.
anybody who has a legitimate value or voice. I would love to have Trump or Obama,
Mhm.
or I don't know. But I think that if they're important enough to have a message, I'm absolutely interested in them.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm my show's not political.
No, no, I know
I have
that.
people on there who are political, but I
Mhm.
think that there's value to be gained from anybody. I mean, especially if they're elected. I mean, it takes a lot to get elected.
Yeah.
That's crazy hard.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my
So you don't have that dream one person. It's just about the value, about the content that they bring.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think that that's definitely, especially because people are different as people. Like I want to know you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I might despise you as a politician, or I might just think you're wonderful as a politician. And
Right.
I will say I have spoken to people in the past where I thought one thing of their persona in public, and when I met them, they were not that way. I'm always most impressed with the people who are like, "Wow, you're just like your presence." There's no, I
Yeah.
can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
That I love, and the behavioral panel is a great example of four guys, and they're like that. I mean, I talk to them on camera, off camera. I don't know which is what. I could forget I'm recording. There's no going in. My friend Chris Lockhead is a great example of that. Lockhead, he's a three-time Silicon Valley marketing CMO, and he talks about, he goes on these shows and the business show, and he,
Mm-hmm.
he makes a joke out of it. He goes, they'll be talking to him ahead of time saying, okay, well, hey, dude, thanks for coming on. I'm really glad. Good to see you. And yeah, you ready to go? Okay, I'm ready to go. Whoa, this morning on Marketing 101. And he's like, what the hell just happened? And it's true. And he's like, and he can't stand people like that either.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'd like to think, you and I talked off air. I don't think my vocal tonality, I might have a tiny bit more energy
Mm-hmm.
when I'm doing an interview or talking here, but it's pretty much me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I have a
Just
beer in me, it'll be even more energy.
same here, man. Same here. But all right, you said you didn't want to tell us what's coming up next.
Well, I have Gina Osborne, FBI agent, coming up Monday or Tuesday. I have members on the YouTube channel, so I'll release a day ahead for members and try to do little videos to practice my one on single time. I'm like, well, if somebody pays to be on the channel, then they probably do want to hear from me. So let me do that for added value. But Gina Osborne is coming up next. She is FBI agent. She has a podcast. Phenomenal, great interview. I just had the behavior panel
Mm.
last night. I'll put it out there. I think it's going to happen, but I have Gary Nesser coming up, and he is the one who talked to David Koresh at Waco
Oh
and
wow.
helped a lot of people get out alive.
Yeah.
And I'm in talks with a cult expert in England who escaped from a cult and runs an organization. That one I've got to figure out the technology to do it, because I mean he has people chasing him and suing him. And if you escape a cult and you're anti-cult, trust me, Scientology, they've got billions of dollars. They can come after you. So
Wow.
you got to be careful with his safety.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Everything Eric puts out can be found on his website, unstructuredpod.com. You can listen to his show Unstructured right there. You can listen to it on all major platforms. So go subscribe to his YouTube channel because his videos are awesome.
Thank you.
How often do you go live on social media?
I'm on social as much as I can be. My live stream on YouTube is every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. I try to maintain.
Awesome.
There's going to be other ones that I can't due to time zones in Europe and trying to work that out. But that's generally the set time that I try to keep.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you very much for showing today, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.